for you. Um, I'm going to have students follow along with me on their Chromebooks as I am doing the lesson on my computer, which will be projected onto the screen so that students can log on and follow me as well. The story that we'll be reading is The Story of an Hour by Kate Chopin. It's a short story, so the kids will not lose interest, hopefully, and it's pretty interesting if you ask me, so I think that'll keep them intrigued as well. We're going to be using the Jane Schaefer model, and we'll have gone over this PowerPoint in the day before. So it basically talks about the Jane Schaefer model and how it's kind of like a hamburger with the topic sentence being the top bun, and then with the concrete deals acting as the meat, and then the commentary kind of being those delicious facts that make it interesting and show a student's interpretation, and then the bottom bun being the concluding sentence. So the student's bell ringer for this day would be for them to write down the five paragraph essay and what the four components would be. So I would expect them to have topic sentence, concrete details, commentary, and then concluding sentence. So by the time we get to this step, they already have kind of been familiar with the Jane Schaefer model. So I'm just modeling how to put it into practice. So everyone, I will say, all right, students, go get your laptops, and they'll use the same method in task one where I have them go row by row. And then once everyone's back at their seat, they'll log in and I'll direct them to Google Docs, which we'll be familiar with because I'll have already done that technology component with them. I'll tell everyone, all right, let's click on a blank document. So we'll go ahead and do that, which will bring us to this blank page. And then they should already know how they're supposed to title it, and it'll be last name. So I'm Miss Hessler, so I'll put Hessler underscore first initial. My first initial is E underscore, and we are going to call this writing model, and then our period will be period one. So we'll do P1. All right. Now, once you guys are finished that, I just want everyone to raise their hand once they're finished. If anyone needs help, turn to your partner and make sure that they're on the same page. Now, if everyone's on this page, I want you to go to the share button. And there's two people I want you to share it with. I want you to share it with Miss Hessler. So you're going to put in her email. We'll do ehesslerellie@gmail.com. And then I also want you to share it with the person sitting next to you, okay? So you want to put in their email, their Gmail account as well. And then here we're going to make it so that they can edit, all right? And we're going to send that so that they're going to have access to our paper. We need to make sure it's saved properly before we send it to them so they know what they're looking for, okay? So they're going to see your last name with your first initial writing model, and they're going to know that that's your paper, okay? So I'm going to walk around and make sure everyone's getting that. Do me a favor, once you're done, if I can get a thumbs up to make sure you've shared it, you've got it saved, and you know what we're doing. All right. So we read Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour last week. All right. Now, what I want us to do is we're going to write a nice paragraph about what we read, okay? Can anyone give me just a quick summary of what happened? Maybe we could get one sentence about where the setting was, something about who the main characters were, and then something about what happened to that main character. And then I'll wait a second to let them respond. If no one responds, then I would obviously either call in volunteers, or if I thought they needed to talk it out with a partner, I would let them talk in their groups and then come back to me, and I would call on one person from each group to give me a different detail about the story. Next, I would say the question that we're going to be answering. So everyone follow along with me up on the board. On your paper, I want you to write question. And the question we're going to be answering is, how does the main character change through the course of the story? All right. So this is the question we're going to be answering, and I want everyone to think about how we're going to answer this in a paragraph, all right? Using that Jane Schaefer model that we read about and talked about yesterday. So if you need help, you can always have your Jane Schaefer notes out with you so that you can look back on those, but I'll be going through it as well. So we're going to do this whole thing together so you guys get a little idea of how to do it first. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to understand the question we're being asked, right? We can't answer a question if we don't know what it's asking us. So let's break this apart into chunks, okay? So what is it asking us? So it's asking us, how does the main character, all right? So they want to know, the who that they want to know about is the main character. So you guys, I want you to follow along with me, and you should be writing everything I'm writing, all right? So how does the main character, and who is the main character? Can anyone tell me? That's right. So it's Mrs. Mallard. She was the woman who found out that her husband died in a tragic train crash. Now, that's the main character, right? Now, what do we want to know about that main character? What do we want to know? We want to know, how does she change? So, what are some changes that she undergoes? And then when does she go undergo those changes? Throughout the story, right? So from beginning to end. So what changes does she undergo? Well, she finds out she goes from being married to being a widow, right? So she finds out that her husband's died. So throughout the story, how does she feel about that? Can anyone tell me? Let's talk with our groups. I want each of you guys to come up with how she felt at the beginning, just one word about how she felt. And then towards the end, how did she feel about her husband passing away? All right, so turn to your partners. I'm going to walk around. Once you guys are done, go ahead and type that answer into this little form we're making. So we'll do at the beginning how she felt, and then at the end how she felt, okay? So now we'll call on volunteers and we'll try to answer this question. I think in the most basic terms, we can say that she was sad at the beginning, right? She found out her husband died, and like most people, she was sad about it. But this is a little more tricky. Towards the end of the story, did she still feel sad about her husband being dead, or did she start to feel different emotions? All right, so I heard some people say it. She started to feel happier. She started to feel free, kind of, because she realized she could have this life of her own. So now we've kind of answered, we've broken this question apart, and now we can start using that model we learned, the Jane Schaefer model, that beautiful hamburger bun, to start to make a beautiful paragraph. So we're going to start with our topic sentence, right? Topic sentence. And our topic sentence should tell the reader what they'll be reading about, right? It should be kind of broad, but mention some of these key details that we're talking about in this section. So, what can we say to kind of incorporate that question into our paragraph? So, we want to know what Mrs. Mallard was feeling, right? So, or what changes she underwent. So, we might say Mrs. Mallard because they asked about that main character, and that's the main character of our story. So, she changes from feeling, you know, sad, or maybe we could even use a better, what's a better word we could use besides sad? If you guys look on the wall, remember we have our boards that show words we could use in place of some of more basic words. So if we look at our sad board, another word we could use might be depressed. So she was feeling depressed over her husband's death. So she changes from feeling depressed over her husband's death, and then we said at the end she starts feeling more free about it, right? She feels like this weight has been lifted. So we can't just make this claim, right? So in this topic sentence, we've made a claim. We've said that Mrs. Mallard changes from feeling depressed over her husband's death to feeling free. So we can't just say that without supporting it. And that's where we need these concrete details. Now, I want to make sure I haven't gone too fast for you guys. So will everyone look over at their partner's paper and make sure that they have their paper written just like mine? I'll give you guys a second. All right, and then I'd let them check, and I'd walk around the room and obviously help anyone that needs help. So next, we have to come up with some concrete details that are going to kind of support that claim that we made, right? Because in our topic sentence, we have said that she changes from feeling depressed to feeling free. So we have to show how in the paper, in the story we read, that comes true. So these are going to be facts or specific details from the story to show that change in Mrs. Mallard. So let's read back through the story. Everyone should have that out. And if we look right here in the first section, It says she wept at once with sudden, wild abandonment in her sister's arms. So this is immediately after she finds out her husband's passed away. And we know that she's not faking it, right? She wept with sudden, wild abandonment because she was very sad about what happened. So we can say that in the story of an hour, Mrs. Mallard, and we can even quote what she said, right? Because then that shows the reader, oh, hey, this is exactly, what was said. This is showing that reader that we know what we're talking about and that we actually read the story and we can use the story to support our claim. So Mrs. Mallard wept at once with sudden wild abandonment. All right. So when did this happen? Did she just wake up one morning and decided to weep with sudden wild abandonment? No, it happened when she heard about her husband's death. So why don't we add that in there somewhere? So we can say, in the story of an hour, Mrs. Mallard wept at once with sudden wild abandonment when she heard of her husband's death or upon hearing of her husband's death. All right, so there we go. We've used the story itself to turn that into something that supports our claim we made in that topic sentence. Is everyone with me? Does everyone have that written just as I have it written? It should say, in the story of an hour, Mrs. Mallard wept at once with sudden wild abandonment upon hearing of her husband's death. Now we've shown how she felt depressed, right? She felt depressed at the beginning. But that's not the only claim we made, is it? Right up here, we say, in the end, she was happier. So we can't just say that and then not support that claim. So the next sentence we make should support that claim that she was feeling free. So let's read back through our story. And as we're reading it, we realize that she starts to sit down, and even here it says she kept whispering to herself, free, body and soul free. And she's just can't get over the fact that now that her husband's passed away, she can kind of be her own woman. So we can use that line to our advantage, right? We can use it to show that that claim we made in the beginning can be supported by the text. So reading on, we can say, later on, let's just use some of those transition words we saw in the PowerPoint, right? We can use things as however or next, or how about however? So however, later in the story, right, because this is towards the end, it's not quite the ending, but it's later on. Later in the story, Mrs. Mallard, she's the character that we're talking about who's undergoing these changes, whispers repeatedly, quote, free, exclamation mark. She's very excited, right? She's not just like, like, I'm free. She's very excited about the fact that she's free, body and soul free. Because do you guys understand why she says soul free as well? She isn't just, free from him and that she got a divorce, but she feels as though she was, freed from him in every way possible because she no longer has this tie to him because he's passed away. So now that we've supported the claims that we made in that topic sentence with evidence from the story, we need to explain to the reader how these claims support our topic sentence, right? One of the biggest deals is you can't just throw in quotes from the text and expect the reader to make assumptions on their own. You have to show the reader specifically how the details you chose support that topic sentence, okay? So let's take a break here, and I want everyone to look at their partner's paper and make sure that theirs matches mine completely, okay? So everyone should have the same stuff that I have. Okay. So as we move on, we need to focus on the commentary section, right? So the topic sentence was our bun. The concrete details are the meat of our hamburger. But this commentary is you. It's what you think. It's your interpretation. It's the reader's ideas of how you got this idea and how you're going to support it. Okay. So now we need to talk about how these details right here support the topic sentence. Okay. So the easiest way to do that is we can say these details because we want the reader to know that these two details we're talking about are supporting that topic sentence. So these two details show the change. Is she undergoing an emotional change, a physical change, a spiritual change? I think it's more of an emotional change. Can we agree on that? I think so. So these details show the emotional change Mrs. Mallard underwent as she realized the new life she could lead without ties to marriage. All right. So I know I went a little quick there. So let's go back through and let's read the sentence that I wrote. So we wanted to connect these details to the topic sentence, right? So we said these details show the emotional change, which is the question we're answering, right? We're trying to show how this character changed. So they're showing the emotional change Mrs. Mallard underwent as she realized the new life she could lead without the ties of marriage. You guys understand? So we can even simplify this down and say that these details show how Mrs. Mallard changed emotionally after the death of her husband, right? Because they are showing that she went from feeling very happy, right? Um, Mrs. Mallard went from feeling, depressed to feeling freedom from her marriage. So now the reader knows, okay, that's why that's why we chose to cite these details, is because it supports that main claim. Now, our final point that we need to do is our concluding sentence. Okay. So the concluding sentence, you can think of it kind of as that bottom bun of our hamburger. We got to finish it up nice and strong. And we want it to refer back to that topic sentence because that's really what our whole paragraph has been about. It's been supporting that claim we made at the beginning. So in order to refer back to that topic sentence, we want to use some of those sentence starters we saw yesterday and that are on your handout next to you. And what's one sentence starter we could use? Anyone from the audience want to volunteer? All right. So yeah, let's use consequently. Good sounding word. It's a strong word that makes it sound like, your claims all support each other, and consequently. So what can we say? What can we say to incorporate our topic sentence into our concluding sentence? So the whole thing we were trying to prove was that Mrs. Mallard changed from feeling depressed over her husband's death to feeling free. So we can say that consequently, because she went from feeling death to feeling the freedom of her marriage, Mrs. Mallard's changing feelings about her husband's death, right? Because that's what this was all about, is how she was feeling about her husband's death. What did that lead her to? What did these changing feelings, what did that culminate in the end? Did she live her life happily ever after, free from her husband? No, right? Her husband actually wasn't dead at all. He walks in the door, and upon seeing him, let's go back to our story. What does it say? It says Richard was too late, right? So her husband, Brentley Mallard, comes back in, and Richard is her brother-in-law, and he tries to, shield Mrs. Mallard from seeing Brentley, and he's too late. And it says when the doctors came, they said she had died of heart disease, of joy that kills. Now, let's look at that line right there, of joy that kills. So what was it that killed her? Was it seeing her husband again? Or was it that loss of what she wanted, right? Because she wanted that freedom. She says even right here, free, body and soul free. And she doesn't get it. And so losing that joy, in a way, it killed her, right? So consequently, what could we say? Consequently, Mrs. Mallard's changing feelings about her husband's death led her to feel such joy, right? It led her to feel such joy that when she found him alive, what happened? The loss of that freedom killed her. So now what I want you to do, so we have our topic sentence, our concrete details, our commentary, our concluding sentence. You guys remember when I said in the beginning that you needed to share your document with your partner? Well, I want you to open your neighbor's document and you two are going to work together to combine these sentences, okay, to make it into a full paragraph. So remember we talked about how we are going to color code our different sentences so that when we're reading through, we know which is our topic sentence, which is our concrete details, without having to write it out. So what we're going to do is our topic sentence is going to be blue. So you guys go through, color code that blue. Our concrete details are going to be red. And then our commentary will be green. And our closing statement will be black. So it'll just say black. Okay. If you have any questions, I'll be circulating around the room, but I want to see your work on your neighbor's work. Okay, so I want to see when you shared it with me, and I go back and look at this later. I want to see the changes you made on your partner's work. Okay, so then what I would expect them to do would be to delete the topic sentence and color code this blue, and then come in here and clean that up. Delete this, not delete, but change this to red, and then this to red as well. And then their commentary I want to be green, so they're going to go through and change their commentary to green. And their concluding sentence is going to stay black. Now, once I've gone around and I've seen that everyone has changed and they've made the changes to their neighbor's paper, I'm going to tell them all right, guys, now that you've made those changes, your paragraph should look like mine. And I will have done this afterward once I know that everyone's done. And I'll tell them that individually, I want them all to go through and make one change to one of the sentences in here. They have to completely delete the sentence and then write their own sentence in place of it. And it can be any one of these sentences, but it has to be completely different from mine, using their own words so that they aren't having to create the whole paragraph from scratch, but they get an idea of kind of making their own sentence with mine already there as a template. I'll give them about 5-10 minutes to work on that. And then once I'm sure that they're done, I'll have them look back at their neighbor's paper that they shared with already, and I'll have them edit their neighbor's sentence that they wrote to see if it answers that question, that if they change the topic sentence, that it's still giving a broad introduction of what it should be. If they change the concrete detail, that it's supported, if they supported it with the story. If they're changing their commentary, that it still combines the concrete details and elaborates upon them, or if they choose to change the concluding sentence, that sentence still sums up the whole paragraph and really shows what they're trying to say. And that way that they've got their guided practice, they've worked in pairs, and they get a little practice on their own. So if I were to do writing, I would use the Jane Schaefer model with having gone over it the day before on the PowerPoint, and then this is the method I would use. Once they're done, I would have them turn it into me in Google Classroom, but they will have already shared it with me, so I'll be able to see any edits that their partner made, and I'll give them credit depending on the edits that they made to their partner's paper, as well as the change they made to their own based on the one sentence they had to change. And I'll also make sure that they have all of the components that I have and that theirs matches mine. And that will be how I would do task 2.